is Tanya with the Literacy Network Northeast in Timmins. I am very sorry for the delay in start. We are having internet issues here at our office this morning. However, we do have Wendy Olson online with us, who is ready to start presenting the measuring progress, choosing assessment tools to measure. We will be keeping track of questions on our end. So if you have any questions, just type them in the question box. We will track them and ask them at the end. And this is being recorded, so it will be posted once it's uploaded, and we'll make sure everyone is notified of that. So again, I apologize for the delay. And with that being said, I hand it over to Wendy.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that you all are joining me today for the third webinar in our series. Today's webinar is brought to you by the North Region Learning Networks, Literacy Network Northeast, Literacy Northwest, and the Mid-North Network. And they are the North Region of the Learning Networks of Ontario, and of course, funded through Employment Ontario. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. This webinar is a series of 5, as I said, and where we're taking a look at the 5 areas of assessment. The first one was choosing the difference between task-based and skills-based. The second one was choosing assessment tools and methods. And today we're going to be looking at choosing tools to measure. As Tanya said, all webinars are recorded and can be accessed via the Northern Network's website. Okay, so our goals for today then, we're going to take a quick review of some of the key MAISD Assessment Foundation documents. We're going to take a look at the task-based programming process to set us up so that we can measure what our learners are learning. We're going to finish the case study with Jeremiah, and we're going to take a look at some resources. Now, throughout the presentation, I have many links to resources and many suggestions, and if anyone else out there has something that is one of their favorite, please just type it in the box, and I'd like just to keep track of that a little bit, to have a favorites list. Okay. So as we know, there are some key foundation documents that MAISD released in 2011. The ones that we're looking at today are going to be our Foundations of Assessment, the Practitioner's Guide to Task-Based Programming, our Curriculum Framework, and there are the selected assessment tools. The 4 key foundation documents, however, though, are the Foundations of Assessment, the Curriculum Framework Foundation, the Foundations of Transition-Oriented Programming, and the Foundations of Learning Materials. One of my favorite tools to help with this webinar, for example, is the Goal Path Descriptors. All of these publications that I'm talking about today can be accessed through this link that's up here, and I'll reference it throughout today's webinar. Now, for those of you that have been with us from the start, this will be a bit of a review. If there are any new participants out there today, then I'm going to be referring to set us up. I'm going to be referring to some of the key foundations of assessment. So I'd like to start again with the FAIR assessment principles. We know that there are 13 of them altogether. We also know that there are 3 to 4 components of assessment, and as of now we have an initial, ongoing, and exit, and coming up is the gains. The document discusses these components very thoroughly. They lay out the foundation to how assessment is approached. They're not the type of documents that you can just read once and then put away. I first was introduced to these in 2011, and I'm still going back to them. There are some key points to remember when we are assessing and measuring our learners. And our fair assessment principles really are the foundation for our assessment. They help us inform our decisions, and it helps to ensure a fair and equitable assessment of all of our learners. If you're looking for these, they are starting on page 2 in the foundational documents. And it's important to know that all of these are directly related back to our adult learning principles. The ones here that I have pointed out, I wanted to highlight them because they're very suitable for the webinars. Assessment should be suitable for the backgrounds and needs and should be related to their instructional goals. So goal-directed assessment fits right in with these principles. Approaches to assessment practices need to be consistent. And again, we're dealing with adults, and that's fair. We need to be consistent in what we're doing. Decisions based about a learner on a single measure is never advisable. Outcomes should be based on multiple assessment methods because a lot of assessment pieces assess a certain thing. So we want to make sure we're getting a fulsome assessment from what we do. We want tools that are consistent and user-friendly and have purpose and construct for the intended purpose, and to make sure they're reliable. So if we remember these things and are mindful of them, it really does help us choose assessment pieces. So in LBS, as we know, we have intake assessment and ongoing, and intake gives us a snapshot of the learner's background, their knowledge, and experience that they've had. Ongoing, again, we do that while they're in the program. It helps us to monitor progress. It also will help identify ways to help develop the abilities they require for their goal path and any barriers. And of course, our milestones now need to be incorporated into our assessment strategy for each learner. Exit assessment, we know, is done at the end of the program, and that helps us determine the skills, knowledge, and behavior that learners have gained. It also can help us identify whether learners have met their goal and also any other readiness for next steps. So it tells us a lot. And now that we are reporting learner progress towards goal completion, we now always have to remember to include the milestones and the culminating task in their plans. The Foundations of Assessment document further goes on to define goal completion and learner gains. Have learners increase their skills, knowledge, and behavior while in our program? Have they made progress towards learning their goals, or have they achieved them? Has the LBS program helped Ontario learners make gains in achieving targeted skills? So those 3 questions tell us a lot. The goal completion and the learner gains are the 2 new strategies, since 2011, that will help the ministry, the practitioners, and learners know whether or not they've attained the above 3 statements. And I bring this to everyone's attention because these questions are very similar to the questions on our exit form. It really does indicate that the learner these are our foundational documents, and the ministry still is using them as we continue to transition through the EOIS, CAMS, and the Employment Ontario network. We've always used goal completion, but we've never had a real true indication of achievement. And that is what this is all about, is being able to show that our learners have made progress. In assessment, we use informal and/or formal tools, as we know from our fair assessment principles and our adult learning principles. We need to use a variety of methods and tools. It is important to recognize the particular aspect of literacy they are measuring. Are you measuring skills development? Are you measuring task performance, social practice, or change? Now, this comes out of our Foundations of Assessment document. And I'm bringing it to note now because this is going to come up later on in our webinar. What aspect of literacy are we measuring? Okay. The last webinar, we went through the key elements of a goal-directed assessment. And so for today, I wanted to review the key elements of task-based programming. Some of the work we have already started in the last webinar, but in order to lead us up to measuring, we need to just take a quick look at the learner plan and the process we use for that. So basically here we have 6 steps, and this is very well laid out in the Practitioner's Guide to Task-Based Programming. If you go searching for it, this is what it looks like over here. So number 1, setting short and long-term goals. Our short-term goal is what they're going to be working on while they're with us. The long-term goal is where they're going next. Step 2, contextualization. Okay. Requirements of the learner's goal, goal-related tasks, some task-based assessment, and the development of our learner plan. Okay. So step 2, I jumped a little bit ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So step 1 is our short-term and long-term goal. And step 2, learners are using materials as they would use them outside the program. We must always remember background, culture, language. LBS delivers 4 cultural and linguistic groups. We know Anglophone, Deaf, Francophone, and Native. Since culture and language does shape a learner's knowledge, their experience, their values and norms, these contexts must be considered to maximize our learners' success. So keep it within the context of who they are and their goal. Step 3 is looking at the requirements of that learner's goal path. Analyzing that goal path. What are they going to be able to have to do once they leave us? 2 main questions to answer here. What can they do now? What will they be required to do after exit? Personally, I love the goal path descriptors. It's a great place to analyze the requirements. Any extra training or certification and skills. The goal path descriptors also even give you prompt questions to ask and explain our role in helping this learner in that goal path. There's 5 goal path descriptors, 1 for each, and the link above here that we have will take you directly to them. And this is what the front of it looks like. It's a great place to analyze requirements of the learner's next steps. Step 4 then is choosing goal-related tasks. Okay. Oops. One of the tools, sorry guys. Oh my goodness. I'm going backwards. I'm so sorry. Hit the wrong button there. Now, one of the tools that was actually developed from the goal path descriptors through a project, the Common Assessment for the OALCF goal paths, was we took the skills checklist at the end of each goal descriptor and we leveled them and attached a competency to them. So here's an example of the key development skills from the goal path descriptors for the employment goal path. And as you can see, if you look at this numeracy, so in employment, there's quite a bit of numeracy in here, and it really gives you an idea of what they'll be having to do once they leave the program and the types of skills and knowledge that's required. So this is taken directly out of the goal path descriptors. We leveled it and attached it to competencies. It makes it very easy for the practitioner. The document itself, this document itself, can be used as a self-assessment for the learner. You can use it to help identify primary competencies and or tasks for the learner to work on. You can also use it to help identify your milestones. Once you've identified your primary competencies, then you're able to identify the milestones for those primary competencies. Identifying your primary competencies associated with that goal path has a very strong role to play in them achieving their goal completion. And we're going to talk about more of that in a bit. Another great resource for the employment goal path for analyzing learners' next step is the essential skills profiles. As you can see, this one is for an administrative clerk. Now, this is an occupation that is in demand right now out where we live. So it's a really good piece for someone that wants to come in and learn to create an employment goal path. Okay, this is a snippet of the administrative clerk one for reading. It gives examples of tasks, and it also has assigned an essential skill level to it. We can easily incorporate this into our LBS learner plan. It also provides the practitioner with the NARC code for CAMS entry. So this is for the employment goal path. And I just wanted to note here, if you're looking at analyzing requirements for the learner's next steps, for the further education goal paths, the college program descriptions are a really good place to start. We're looking at what that learner is going to have to be looking at and doing once they leave us. Okay. In step 5, we're going to be choosing some task-based assessment. This piece evaluates the learning that has occurred using authentic materials that are goal-directed. If we always keep in our minds that it's goal-directed, then the pieces we choose are going to be authentic to that goal path. So it's imperative that we build our resources for each goal path. As practitioners, we're always wanting to build our toolboxes. And I know it takes a lot of time, but it is worth it in the end. So I've chosen 2 samples here for you guys. One is our tool, the Common Assessment for the OELCF goal paths. The other one is the portal for the task-based activities. And there's the links where you can find them. Now, common practice in LBS has always been to set our learners up for success. We always try to give them a task or a demonstration, as we used to call it, before administering a really formal assessment, now such as a milestone. If we follow this practice and we keep this and are mindful of it, it not only provides the learner with the opportunity to apply new skills he's learned, but it also helps the practitioner to determine milestone readiness. Just like we used to get ready for big culminating task or demonstration at the end. We're seeing if they're ready. We're going to set them up for success. Again, numerous resources have been developed over the past 6 years to help support us. These are my 2 favorites at the moment, and I hope you guys all choose your favorites. One thing that the Foundations of Assessment, the Task-Based Guide, and the Curriculum Framework does talk about leveling your own tasks. If you have a task that you really, really like, but it is not yet leveled to the framework, it's step-by-step in there how you can do that. And there are tools that we'll talk about in today's webinar, next webinar, about choosing, leveling your own tasks or creating your own tasks. Okay. You can also, again, go back onto the government's website. They have selected resource lists for each goal path, and they also have resource lists by stream. So again, we're using authentic, goal-directed assessment pieces and learning materials. Step 6 gives us our learner plan. Now, we know that our learner plan identifies all of our program elements, our tasks and activities, any related skills development, knowledge and behaviors that learner is going to need to achieve their goal. Our learner plan also identifies our timeline and our key indicators of progress, our primary competencies. If you look at your learner plan overall, it actually identifies the assessment strategy you are going to use for that learner. And it also provides us with tracking information that corresponds with that learner's goal. And again, we're going to be talking more about tracking in the next webinar, but we can't do one without the other because it's a process. So we're just going to go through now. I want to talk about the curriculum framework before we actually take a look at the measuring process. The curriculum framework, this is a sample from the beginning of it, and it is competency A, find and use information. Task group 1, reading continuous text. And I just wanted to point out the 2 types of descriptors. We have our performance descriptors and we have our task descriptors. Our performance descriptors are observable characteristics of the learner's performance. They're features that are expected at the end of that level. The task descriptors, on the other hand, describe the qualities of the task and features given at the end of that level. We know as we move through the framework, tasks move from simple format to more complex. The more complex, the more the learner has to infer, analyze, and adapt, hence the complexity. So we always need to remember these 2 things work together. Okay. The second half of that page is actually the curriculum framework that gives you example tasks. So if you're thinking about looking at activities for your learner to work on, this one is for secondary school, and you can see, read a brief email confirming the date and time of a meeting. Okay. Now that's a task common across all the goal paths because it's a task common across all goal paths. But what I wanted to note here is that many of these example tasks used in the framework can not only be used as activities, daily activities. You can break this down, right? And if there's any skills missing, go back. But read a brief email confirming the date and time of meeting is also an indicator of the skills required to do the milestone for that particular goal path at that particular level and task group. So I just thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to note that to you guys, that if you use the framework as part of choosing daily activities, you're already setting them up for the milestone. And I just thought that was important. Now this again, I've highlighted. Learner progress is measured and tracked through the use of tasks that are related to the learner's goal path. Goal-directed assessment, task-based programming process leads you right in to your learner plan and how to choose your measures, okay? Your assessment pieces. It's so important for us to recognize the particular aspect of literacy that we're measuring. Some we're going to have to measure skills, tasks, behavior, or knowledge. What is it we want the learner to learn? We have to ask ourselves that. What is it we want the learner to learn? We want them to be able to apply and adapt. That's what we want them to do in the end, is apply those new skills or the new learning, transfer the skills to that new situation, and then adapt. So all the tasks are integrated with the skills that they need to do that. Based on the performance of the tasks they do, then we can also identify any other further skills gaps. It's not a one straight line. You go and you find a task and you realize, oh, we have to do some more skills upgrading in conversion. And you go back and forth. And again, depending on the goal path, it's going to depend on how much skills development they need. So I hope I've set us up to take a look at Jeremiah, and we're going to try and finish up Jeremiah's case study today. So again, for those of you that were with us for the first two, it's going to be a bit of a review, but for any new participants, I want to go through it together again. So this is actually a case study that was taken out of the curriculum framework itself, and I've changed it up a bit for our purposes. So Jeremiah was referred to a literacy program by a local employment service. He was recently laid off after working in a factory for 15 years. Jeremiah is interested in becoming a welder. He wants to obtain his secondary school diploma since he was just a few credits short of achieving it. He could then apply to the welder program at his local community college. Jeremiah has been out of school for over 20 years. He explained that he worked on a production line, so his job was very repetitive. He did, however, use a computer station, felt he could read very well, and was quite handy with small motors and other equipment. Okay. The practitioner that spoke with him made her notes. In her notes, she made a few observations. He filled in the registration form on his own with very few questions. He does like to work on his own. He is friendly but reserved. He's very committed to his goals, and his learning style was kinesthetic and visual. So this is a great example of informal assessment. As a practitioner, you are the expert. Based on your observations, some informal and formal assessment, you're going to gather this up to sit down and help develop your learning plan. So if we think of it in terms of questions, what do we know about Jeremiah? We know his long-term goal path is secondary school credit. We know he's been away from school environment for over 20 years. Where do we start with Jeremiah? Using our goal-directed process, we know to choose pieces that are specific for the secondary school goal path. We could use the goal descriptors, which again is one of my favorite tools. The ministry's given us, if you add it all up, I believe our LBS evaluation said there was over 100 documents to support the Employment Ontario EOIS CAMS and OELCF transformations. So once you find them and you're familiar with them, you'll find your favorite ones too. We could use the curriculum framework. The Escargo is an excellent tool, especially if you're not sure of what embedded skills are. It's a great place. Our key development skills checklist, again, very succinct, great support tool for practitioners. And it also really helps the students see all the things they're going to have to do. The task-based portal, the essential skills indicators, these are some of our favorite tools to use. What level do we choose? So based on our discussion, our intake, interview, and observations, level of Jeremiah's proficiency, we'll start with a self-assessment piece and a level 2. So suggestions for initial assessment could be the indicators from Essential Skills. This is an online and the goal online tool. And because we know Jeremiah likes working on the computer, that might be very suitable for him. We could use the OALCF, the Common Assessment for the 5 goal paths, the Secondary School Goal Path Skills Development Checklist, another great succinct tool. And we could use 2 task-based assessment pieces just to see how he can apply the skills he has. And of course, another favorite resource of mine is the portal for the task-based activities. And there is a tool in there, Basic Operations for Math. Okay. So we know in Jeremiah's case study, he completed this assessment over a period of 2 visits. We used skills-based for math, and we also used task-based, as you can see. When considering its goal path, skills development is going to be very important to remember because it's secondary school. So, as a secondary school student, he will have to focus on skills development and be able to apply those to a task-based activity. And again, the Essential Skills Indicators is a great online assessment tool, especially if your learner likes computer on the computer. So this is the results of Jeremiah's assessment, and this piece was taken right from the curriculum framework, and it's a great visual to understand strengths and needs. It also identifies your primary competencies to work on and secondary competencies. So we can see he needs to work on competency B, writing continuous text, and competency C, measurement. The secondary competencies could be, because we know where he's going, to secondary school environment, and he's quite reserved. We might want to help him later on with managed learning, see how he does in that. We could help him with B1, interacting with others, as we go down. But the primary competencies will be B and C. Okay. We could also later on down the road, we could maybe even help him to sit in a group setting. If he's going to night classes, or many times he may have to be required to work in a group, and that's a behavior that we may want to work on down the road. So we know where Jeremiah comes from. We know his goal path. Through his assessment, we know the 2 primary competencies that we want to work on. So now we're going to choose some goal-related tasks and activities. We're going to choose activities, some skills upgrading, perhaps measurement, fractions, conversion, and of course, competency B, the writing. We also need to be mindful of the milestones as well. So we've got all this stuff, and we're going to map it out now. Other possible resources here for a secondary school goal path that I have listed is MathSense, because of the skills required for his secondary school goal path. It's a great resource. And the Read It, Write It resources for writing, we know that he's going to have to writing paragraphs. We know he's going to have main idea, supporting details, etc., etc. So that's a great resource to help set your students up in that goal path. Here I've taken a couple snippets of some task-based assessment that we could use for Jeremiah. This slide comes from the task-based portal, and as you can see, it's the CAT test basic operations, and very, very indicative of what Jeremiah is going to be having to learn or in his grade 12 courses. You can see that it's for the post-secondary or secondary school credit. Because Jeremiah wants to become a welder and going to be ended up in college, it actually hits both of his goals, his main goal and his long-term goal as well. You can see it also measures C3-1 and C3-2. So it's can be a really good indicator, because his goal path is going to require some skills assessment and some task-based assessment. Can he take those skills and transfer them into a task? So what I did was I picked this one, Dimensions of a Desk. Now, this is from the Common Assessment for the OALCF GOPAS. And the reason that I picked this one is we look at the performance descriptors and we can see all of the things that he needs to be able to do. And then if we look, it's chopped off just a little bit at the bottom, the embedded skills. So if we take a look at his performance at this task, it's not only going to identify any missing skills, it's also going to help us identify further or additional pieces. Sometimes you choose a great piece, but it doesn't actually hit all of the performance descriptors. It might adding, subtracting, whole numbers, common shapes. So sometimes we have to supplement and add in a few other pieces, and that's okay because we've given him the skills development that he's needed, and now he's got to apply that to a task. The task-based portal also has lots of numeracy activities we could use for Jeremiah in welding. Because it's still math he's required for grade 12, and it's also math he's going to be required to do on that job. So it hits both of his goals. So that's one of the reasons why I chose those pieces. Then if we take a look at our milestones, okay, what milestones are appropriate for Jeremiah? Okay, so I chose milestone 45, measuring and calculating distances and temperatures. Now, this one here is not going to measure all of the numeracy skills that Jeremiah needs, but it is going to measure a lot of them, and it also is going to help because of his math that's going to be required for welding. Okay. I also chose the other primary competency, writing continuous text. Write a thank you note and an email. And if you remember, if we go back to our framework, that's actually one of the tasks that they work on. So you really are, if you think of this as a strategy, you really are setting them up for success. Just off the top of my head, another resource you could use for this are some of the apprenticeship math tools. Even though it's secondary school, a lot of that math is going to be the same. And we want to make Jeremiah, we want to make his tasks and activities directed to his goal, and we know the kinds of math he's going to use in welding because I went and checked out the essential skills profiles as well. So again, analyzing those next steps is really key in designing your assessment. So because I like visuals, I put this in a little visual for us. We're going to start choosing daily activities that are going to build and support those primary competencies that he needs. We're going to move and apply those skills to some tasks directly related to his goals. The milestones are going to show us, is he making progress? Can he apply and adapt with the new knowledge and skills he's learned? And then we're going to move him to a culminating task. So daily activities, again, could be skills building for fractions and measurings, communications for further education, basically, and then your numeracy. We could use the MathSense for numeracy, the task-based portal for both primary competencies, the reading and communications. Task-based assessment pieces, we chose two. We chose one from the task-based portal. We chose another one from the Common Assessment for the OALCF GOPAS. Dimensions of a desk and using measures is another great one, and that was a level 2. Our milestone selections was milestone 45 and milestone 19. And then you take a look at the culminating task. Are there any other skills, knowledge, behavior Jeremiah needs to move into that culminating task? The culminating task is an integrated task. It has all of the competencies in it. And we know that in secondary school, once they finish a course, there is a huge task at the end. that culminates all of the things that they have learned through that course. So the culminating task is a really good indicator for secondary school goal path, because it's something that they will have to learn and do and use in that goal path. So the reason why we're here, and again, this is webinar 3. Agency staff is clear about what they want to measure and choose assessment tools appropriate to our purpose. So we all want to be fully in place, and some of us are maybe mostly in place. If you always remember the learner's goal path, take a look at the steps for the goal-directed assessment and the process for task-based programming. Always use tools appropriate to that goal path. It will be a lot easier for you to develop that plan and make your own strategy for your learners. One of the tools that we created to help practitioners do this is the Common Assessment for the OALCF Goal Path Resource Package. Our goal really was to develop a resource package for practitioners for each goal path that included a strategy for components. Our purpose was to create a foundational piece for common assessment resources and practices that practitioners and programs can build upon. This was created in response to practitioner feedback and the needs with the new framework. We shifted from a skills-based to a task-based, and we needed some tools to support that and support our practitioners. Literacy Northwest applied for project dollars through the Service Delivery Network Development Fund in 13-14, and this is a direct response to practitioners' needs. The resource contains the 5 goal paths, as I said. It has an index of activities, all the key development skills lists, and again, these were taken right from the goal path descriptors to put in a very succinct document to support practitioners' work. There's activities for each competency level and task group. And what's so nice about it is if you don't like that specific piece, on the side of each piece is other resources that you can use. Each package also has the answer sheets, resource lists, and some other support tools such as the practitioner and learners bulletins. And those are also great resources to take a look at the role of what we do, resources for the learner and yourself, and to help explain things to the learner as well. And then of course the reading rubrics. Okay. If programs use this as a foundation to build on, they can take each section, add in your own favorites, that are specific for that goal path, and it would be kind of like a go-to that this then can be used to show the ministry that you understand a task-based assessment approach. You have the tools for each goal path. Your assessments are goal-directed. And you have the capacity to do this. And it's also a great thing to do for brand new people. If you have a foundational binder for each goal path, then new people can come in and start choosing assessment pieces almost immediately, which is very nice for succession planning and training as well. Here are some other links again of some of our favorite tools. And again, the Common Assessment for the OALCF Goal Path. The essential skills indicators are really short, succinct, they're computer-based. A lot of learners, especially younger learners, really like this. And then they get the feedback at the end. The Ontario Native Literacy Coalition has some great resources as well in regards to the essential skills. The task-based portal for LBS, again, this is one of my favorites because it's specific to our framework. It's specific to the goal paths, and they can be used in many ways. They can be used as breaking them down for skills development, for daily activities. They can be used for task-based assessment. If the milestone doesn't cover all of the performance indicators, then you can use them as well for additional assessment pieces. CABS, of course, the Read It, Write It is a great one for secondary school. The Work Right series, there's quite a few. The Escargot, and that's the link at the bottom there for Escargot. And I noticed this morning Anne-Marie sent out, yesterday and this morning, she sent out some new resources regarding essential skills and GED. And GED tools could be used too for the secondary school goal path as well, because of the skills development and the type of applications that they use. Well, that went through a lot faster than when I thought, you guys. This was part 3 out of part 5. Next time that we are together will be November 21st, and we're going to be talking about tracking learner achievement in relation to their goal. And just keep in mind, their learner plan is one of the best places and the first places you're going to use to track. And we're going to talk more about that in November. And the last one is an assessment strategy. So if you think about the little assessment strategy we just used for Jeremiah, for an individual, we can take that and extrapolate that and build a foundation strategy for each goal path. Again, to be used as a key foundational piece in your toolbox. I love to have many different resources in my toolbox, and I know that Sandra does too. And it takes a long time to get to know all the resources. But I encourage you to read your foundational documents, take a flip back through the curriculum framework. It is a great tool for any of the 6 key steps that we just went through. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they would like to make?
Hi, Wendy, it's Tanya here. So far, there have been no questions that have been shared or no comments or anything. Everybody is on mute, but I can unmute them if you'd like.
We've got some time, don't we, Tanya?
Oh, for sure. We have another 25 minutes of scheduled time.
Okay, so maybe if someone has questions.
Okay, so I will unmute everyone.
Okay.
From my end, and then that way there, if they decide they want to remute themselves, they can do that.
Okay.
So I've unmuted everyone that I could. So if anyone wants to ask Wendy any questions, please feel free to do so. And if you're trying to ask a question and we're not responding to you, send me a message or unmute yourself from your end, because I am unable to mute some people from my end. It's still pretty quiet on my end here, nothing from anybody. I don't know if there was maybe anything else you wanted to go over, Wendy, or... All right, well, if there are no questions or comments at this time, hold on a second. Anne Marie, you're self-muted from your end. There we go. Yeah. All right. If you're still muted, it's because you're muted on your end, so you would have to unmute yourself. But it doesn't seem like anyone has any questions or comments. However, the contact information is up on the screen. If anyone does have any questions or comments, feel free to contact Wendy or Sandra. Both their emails are there on the screen. Anne Marie's email address is there. And if you're with the Literacy Network Northeast, feel free to contact myself. And if you're with the Mid-North Network, feel free to contact Laurel, and we will get you the answers that you need. I'd like to thank Wendy for her time this morning. And again, I apologize for the delay in getting started. This has been recorded. Once it's uploaded and it has a location, we will send an email out to everyone letting you know where you can find the recording. So I hope everyone has a great day. And again, Wendy, thank you very much. That was really weird.